Hi guys, it's Trevor Tolliver here, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, here at the Blue Day podcast, I am truly delighted to introduce my guest on this show today. He made 26 appearances for the club, scoring the one goal. During his time with the club, he won the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup in 1998. Plus, he played alongside the likes of Roberto Di Matteo, Steve Clarke, and Frank Leboeuf. Here is Danny Granville. Danny, welcome to the show. How are you?
Right. Yeah, good, thanks, mate. All good, thank you. Been a busy day, been coaching and that, but just got back and glad to join you.
Great to have you on, Danny. We'll obviously touch on your time with Chelsea as well in that sort of great period of the late 90s that people still talk about to this day. But I always want to start the interview, if I can, by sort of discussing in terms of what was the moment for you when you decided to become a professional footballer?
Blimey, I always wanted to as a kid. I used to play for me club side, which was Chapel Boys in Islington. And my dad was manager. Then it sort of progressed. You play for your county, your borough first, then London. So yeah, and then you just aspire to do as well as you can. And then I sort of done the rounds really as a youth player. I was at Arsenal for a spell. Had a couple of growth, like you have shin splints or Osgood Slattis, and ended up it was so less formal than it is today with the academies. It was just like I remember my dad saying he was at the side with a guy, Terry Murphy, who used to be at Arsenal, and it was just like, he's been out for a while, struggling a bit, yeah, and I'm not sure if Arsenal's quite for him. He said, no problem, my dad, because I then sort of just went to Charlton, actually. Charlton, and that's how it was then, whereas now you have all like reviews every couple of months and stuff. But yeah, and then it obviously you're in the system, and then I was at Charlton for a while. I left Charlton to go to Spurs, and that was as a number 10, actually. Can you believe it? Obviously ended up with they used to have an A and a B team at Tottenham, and they had a lad called Jeffrey Minton in the A team, and I was like number 10 in the B for a spell. Anyway, didn't transpire. So then you have shop window games really, where it's a bit like a meat market. It feels it. It's horrible as you're going through it, but you've got all the scouts and clubs watching, and there was a few watching then. But actually, the funny thing was Cambridge. I ended up going to Cambridge United, but it was a ref who ref one of our games, and he was doing a bit of scouting for Cambridge, and he ended up recommending us, and that's when I went to Cambridge, and obviously that's how it sort of transpired. But yeah, I mean, from a kid, I always wanted to be a footballer. That's what most kids dream of doing, really.
Who was your idols growing up as a kid?
Actually, my idol was Brian Robson.
Right.
Yeah, funny enough, obviously Man United player, but he was like Captain Marvel, wasn't he? He was like the captain of England, and everyone sort of loved him. I was in his fan club, actually, Brian Robson. But other players, I used to like Kenny Sansom. Yeah, so many. Obviously, Kerry Dixon at Chelsea used to like. It was around that era, wasn't it? But yeah, I'd have to say Brian Robson was my hero growing up.
Let's fast forward to March of 1997. You would sign for Chelsea from Cambridge for a fee, I believe it was around £300,000. How did the move to Chelsea materialise?
So we had a fantastic manager at the time at Cambridge, a fella called Roy McFarlane, who was a great player, played for England, centre half for England, and his assistant actually was David Priest, who was like a ball playing midfielder. He's not with us anymore, sadly, but them two were fantastic. And although it'd been a bit mixed times at Cambridge, I think early on I struggled a bit. It was a very long ball game, whereas I'd like to sort of get the ball down and play. So at one point, to start off with, it could have gone either way, I suppose, but had a great guy, Gary Johnson, our youth team coach as well, who was brilliant. Tommy Taylor was in there. But at the time with the Chelsea, Roy McFarlane was manager, and it come to the point where first time a few of us had an agent. And at the time, they're saying not to sign a contract because obviously there could be clubs interested, and I managed to get sort of about 100 games under my belt over the years. I was there for 6 years. But Roy was saying, again, have meetings, because you're told not to sign a contract. And I love Roy to bits. And it was, but, don't sign it. And he's saying, I'll sign, do this. And it was most days. There was another lad called Jody Craddock, a guy called Micah Hyde, and Matty Joseph as well. There was 4 of us young players. And at the time, Cambridge were in the playoffs. So we was aware of clubs watching. At the time, I think it was... might have been Wigan, Norwich. I think Mike Walker showed an interest. So you're kind of aware that clubs are watching, and you're a young English player coming through and that. And one day he called us in, Roy McFarlane, and said, "Oh, Dan, you're doing well. Keep it going. Want to keep you grounded." He said, "But I will tell you, there's a big club watching you." And that, I was like, "Oh, can you tell us? Like, who is it?" And I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. And I thought, fine. And then it sort of went quiet, just carry on playing. And then got told about the Chelsea move. It was like, oh, Chelsea. Was like, well, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, Chelsea, like at the time it was all cosmopolitan. It was like Chelsea had the superstars in it. And I ended up going down. Actually, that weren't the team though. Afterwards, once I'd signed, I ended up going down to Stamford Bridge and meeting Mr. Bates, and he was like, "Let me see where my money's going," and that. And I spoke to Roy after, and listen to this. So he was no. I said, "I can't believe it, Roy." It's like, he said, "Fantastic." He sent a nice message, actually. Fax, wasn't it, back in the day? It was a fax. Make sure you get Zola to make the tea and all that. It was like, but it turned out it was Man United, the other team, which I was right. I can't believe it. It was, but they wanted us to go in and train. They wanted to see you training. I said, "I can't believe Chelsea." He said, "Well, actually, that wasn't the team at the time. United had been watching for about 12 games, but they wanted you to go in and train, whereas Chelsea..." So I was like, just, wow, it was amazing. So, yeah, that's how it sort of come about.
Ruud Gullit was in charge of team affairs at that point. What was your relationship like with him?
Listen, a world icon. Again, growing up, it was like, the AC Milan, Van Basten, himself, Rijkaard. So it was like Ruud Gullit, and he was brilliant for me. I mean, he used to say, "You're like a rough diamond, need polishing." So we'd go in and, excuse the Dutch accent, by the way, but we'd have to go in and have a morning. The youngsters would do extras and all technical bits. But yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. What an education to learn off someone of that stature. And I mean, I remember a game at Stamford Bridge. We had a training game, like just with the first team against reserves, or just a mix. And he played on the right. And obviously, you don't want to kick your manager. You've got to be very. Like, he just had this aura about him. He was like a big guy anyway. And he was just, I remember him on the touchline. He'd drag you into positions, and he was just so clever. I thought, imagine, at Chelsea he was playing as a sweeper. But for this training game, he probably just done it, to sort of, but I just thought, imagine playing against him, like, it was just tops. And yeah, it was just brilliant tactically, on a technical side, just loved it really.
You'd make your debut for Chelsea in a league game, albeit as a sub against Arsenal. Arsenal would go on to win the game quite comfortably. When did you know that you'd make the matchday squad for that game?
To be honest, like when I joined, I think I was signed one for the future. Do you know what I mean? So that season was when we had the Cores kit, wasn't it? The following season was the Auto Glass kit. It was, yeah. So when I first signed, I went into the reserves naturally, and that's where I thought, because I actually asked to stay at Cambridge. We were in the playoffs, and I thought, if I'm just going to go to Chelsea, like, fantastic, but I want to play. But no, it didn't get agreed because I wanted to, obviously, and then I'd be, But so I went straight into the reserves, and I think I scored on my debut. And I remember Eddie Nedvesky afterwards making a bit of an example of us. Saying, what great. And anyway, so I probably got in the first team quicker than was expected, because that season I played it might have been the last 3 games. I remember we played Leicester, and I think I crossed it to Mark Hughes, who scored a header. But yeah, the Arsenal game, obviously, after sort of doing well for the Resis, and that, which was over Kingstonian, wasn't it, back then? We used to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I found out, it was like amazing to make your Premier League debut, against the team, that I supported as a boy, my local team, being from sort of that way. So yeah, bit shame about the result, but yeah, it was yeah, no, it was a great day.
Well, we didn't have a bad season that season, to be fair. We'll touch on that now. Before we discuss the FA Cup final of '97, I would like to ask, and I've asked this in terms of everybody that was involved around that era. Was you a fan of the '97 Cup final song sung by Suggs?
Oh, see again, it was because he used to live near me, Suggs, and I'm a Madness fan. And my dad, like when he walked down the street, sometimes used to pass. There was a pub at the end of our street, and Suggsy's there, and it just seemed like really how it's all sort of panned out. But it's a great song. I felt a bit like conscious being there. I thought, well, I ain't really contributed much, but no, it was a great song. When you see it now, it's fantastic. It's like quite iconic, isn't it? And when you see Viali singing and that, and it's just fantastic. And all the boys, I think it was brilliant. Yeah, brilliant song.
Would probably say it's the last best FA Cup song done, to be fair, in just
Yeah,
in general. I don't think there's been anyone that's topped it since.
yeah. And do you know what? I think it's all like changed, isn't it? Like when you look at, I think supporters could sort of, there was more of a connection back then, wasn't there?
Mm.
I think the game now, like you don't see it now, do you? And we was talking earlier actually about, player managers. When you think both Rude and Gianluca were player managers, do you know what I mean? Imagine that nowadays, like if you have so many staff at clubs, imagine they're having to play and manage. It's just gone, it's gone down a different path, isn't it? It's,
Certainly has.
people love it or hate it, whatever. But no, with regards to the song, I mean, yeah, just thankful to be involved in it, and it was great. With that, the FA Cup, I was like, Scott Minto played, I think, in the final. Anyway, yeah, and but they did sort of say, like, are you cup? I was cup tied anyway, but I wouldn't have deserved to play. But and Scott, done fantastic. But he sort of, I don't know who we played against that year. Might have been Scarborough away in the third division, but or in the FA Cup rather. But yeah, no, it was just great to be involved. And I mean, afterwards, Dennis, I got my brother on the bus. We obviously went out celebrating. You think to yourself, blimey, it's, a month ago, I'm sort of plying my trade in the third division, and now you're at Wembley in the FA Cup. So yeah, that's pinch yourself really.
What was the experience like travelling with the team, going to Wembley, again, being involved in such a huge occasion for the club and even for the players as well?
No, it was just amazing. And I always, someone said recently, I see something, a quote like somebody saying, don't think you're going to do this again. Do you know what I mean? I think you sort of feel like you will. You don't, because really, obviously, Wembley. Then I was lucky enough to play in the Charity Shield.
Yes.
I did hope you'd have more, but you just got to cherish every might be your only time if you're lucky enough to do it. But yeah, no, it was just fantastic to be involved. And I mean, in the after party, I think Pele was there, and people were having pictures with Pele, and just yeah, it was just fantastic, and obviously to win as well, great. And then the open bus parade, wasn't it? And around Chelsea, it was just to be involved in that. Like I say, if you think a few games before, I'm sort of playing in the third division and go to that, yeah, it's just yeah, amazing.
You mentioned the Charity Shield in '97. We'd go to play Manchester United. You'd start the game. What are your memories on that occasion? Because again, as you said, you was cup tied, which you weren't involved in the FA Cup. But then again, albeit yes, it's the Charity Shield, but it's still a game at Wembley.
Yeah. Funny enough, I used to love the Charity Shield as a kid, and they used to share. Never forget, like I think United and Everton shared it one year, but that day we drew 1-1 with United, and it went to penalties, and yeah, we didn't. So yeah, it was just great to play at Wembley. As it's the only time I played at Wembley actually, the Charity Shield, because like with Palace later on in my career, it would have been played at Wembley, but it was obviously moved, so we ended up playing in Cardiff.
Yes, right, yeah.
To have that experience, yeah, to have your family there, yeah, just yeah, very very blessed to have done that.
One thing I did want to ask in the summer of '97 as well, Chelsea would go on a little bit of a spree. They'd sort of bring in some sort of, well, even more is established names like they did sort of the year before. But one player that they brought back Graham Lasso,
Yeah.
an experienced left back. Did you see this as a hindrance for your development, or did you see this as a chance to maybe learn and improve from someone like Graham?
Bit of both, really. I suppose, obviously, a left back because Celestine Babiero as well had been signed.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought, I suppose your initial thing, oh, signed a left back, but obviously his connection with the club and that it was, but I thought I'd learned loads at the time as the England left back, and I just thought just pick up as many sort of gold nuggets as you can, which I'd like to think I did, and obviously at the time, so I was playing in the under-21s, and he was the full international. So it was brilliant, really. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that, you sort of think Chelsea, you've got the under-21 left back, and obviously the full left back at that time. It was really good. The old dogs are barking. I'll have to. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. No problem at all. You scored your only goal for the club in the Cup Winners' Cup against Slovian Bratislava at Stamford Bridge. Firstly, what was it like to play in a European competition for you? And to get your first goal, that must have been sort of a nice little feeling for you, knowing that, again, you was only at the club for a few months from this point.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of my second season. I think I joined sort of around Christmas time the first season. But going into that season, we had a real good run. I played out in Tromsø, was it, where it was snowing?
Yes, yeah, that was the round after. Yes,
yeah, and no, it was so Slovan Bratislava. That was the earliest game then. I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, no, I mean to start in a European tie, let alone score. I think it was Jonathan Pearce. It used to be on Channel 5, didn't it?
That's right. Yes, yes.
Yeah, no, it was just amazing. And after that, actually, so like real good. I don't know. I was just up for a corner, I think, and flicked it over. It was almost like something takes over you, and you just. But
it was a good finish.
Yeah,
a very good finish.
But yeah, no, it was just fantastic. But after that, I didn't play for about 5 games, so I was on such a high, and just itching at the bit to play. And I don't, because there's a lot of you get a lot of press from it, so it's probably Rude's way of bringing you back down to earth. But I was just like so confident, but I didn't play for about 5 games after that, and it's maybe that was his way of sort of keep your feet on the ground. But yeah, no, it was brilliant. We won 2-0, and then we went and played them away, wasn't it? Slovan Bratislava away. But yeah, it was just a fantastic run, and I mean, Rude sort of used to chop and change. It was, he had a squad. He was into the squad system. So, you play one game, which everyone understood, and you might not play for 2 or you might play for 3 and not. So it was a rotational squad, which is the way he believed. And yeah, and, he had trust in the players to do it. So.
And you mentioned the game against Tromsø, that first leg away over there. Incredible scenes when if people can look back on it on YouTube or whatever clips you can find on social media, the snow that was falling down and the fact that they didn't abandon the game, considering the amount of snow that did fall down. Yeah. We'd go on to lose it, but Vialli would score late on, so it kept us sort of alive in the tie. That was a unique game to be involved in.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And when you look at it as like pictures now, with having a red ball, how often do you see that?
Yes, yeah.
But it was just, like nothing I'd experienced before, and I don't know if you see it in the future, but yeah, it was a real tough. Obviously it's going to be a leveler, isn't it, on a playing field? Chelsea with the quality that we had, then in the snow and that, and it was going their way. But I think I'm not sure if it ended up 3-2. And Vialli was almost like digging it out of the snow in the end, and he luckily we then took that back to Stamford Bridge, and there's only a 1-goal sort of deficit. But yeah, it's just again, you look back on that and think to be involved in that with a red ball, yeah. So yeah.
Sort of after that though, the league form was a little bit inconsistent. We'd do well against like the top sides like Man United away, but then we'd end up losing to the likes of Southampton or Wimbledon, just for example. What would, at that time, what would you put that down to in terms of having that inconsistent time with Chelsea not being in terms of title challenges?
I don't know. Yeah, probably like you're saying, it's beating the top teams, but maybe dropping points to the lesser teams. At the time, that may be because I don't know. Did the teams where you're expected to win, did they sit back and then make you seem like tactically now like teams play high press, mid press, or mid block, low block. Do you know what I mean? So it might have been thinking back. Was that what their tactics were? They're just sitting in, stopping Chelsea because obviously you think of it. We used to play a diamond. When you think of the lights, you've got Dennis Wise, Petrescu, Di Matteo, Poyet. You imagine that, like if you say like a propeller, if it's a diamond, any of them can drop in, be the holding midfielder, any could be the, obviously teams are going to try and combat that, when you think so. Yeah, that might have been what the issue was. Whereas when you play the top or the bigger so-called teams, United, whatever, maybe they come out at you more and you can expose them on the counter or whatever. But yeah, that's, thinking back, it's probably what that was, maybe drop points against them sort of teams. Yeah.
You've mentioned Dennis Wise. What was he like as a captain? And do you have any interesting stories that you could share about him?
Yeah, but don't know about share them. But yeah, no, yeah, no, he was a great leader. He was the one who's going to sort of, point the finger and stuff. And again, also there was not that side of him. He a good laugh. There was a good laugh. And it was almost like him and Steve Clark used to be the older ones in the dressing room, really. Obviously, you had older players, but the British sort of players. But yeah, no, Dennis, he was tough. It was surprising he was quite, he was obviously small, but he was strong. I remember like seeing him doing weights and he's surprisingly strong. And I remember when I went, because I always used to be like up there with the running, in the long distance running, Cambridge and stuff. And I was still up there. I was about third or something. Like he was, and I thought, wow, he's fit. You don't realise sort of, the endurance that he had. So no, he was, like I say, a great leader.
Do you think, sort of touching on the modern day football, do you think that type of captain is missing in this day and age? Do you think we'll ever get to that stage where you'll have somebody like a Dennis in terms of or what he was like as a leader? Do you think that we've gone past that now, that we won't get captains like that? Or do you think it's just a little phase that the modern day footballer is going through?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. One major thing you look at, really, you can't really tackle now, can you? It's more sort of interceptions. You imagine odds that they say like Roy Keane, Dennis, Vieira. It's probably I think you see it in different ways. I think the game has changed so much. And you think back like Vinnie Jones, the team spirit that they had, where the game evolved, and it's I suppose it's quicker and more technical. And you can't, like I say, you can't tackle. You think what the Zolas and that had to deal with in terms of but the protection that top players get now. Imagine, so it has changed. But I suppose the captains probably show it in different ways. But yeah, it does seem, I don't know. And you look at the generations, the generation coming through now. You look at it, and I think there was more sort of curveballs. In terms of there was more characters in football. You look back then, Tony Adams, Keown, it was tougher. It was tougher, and I think that probably annoys a lot of people, like the older generation who watch it now, where football, listen, it's fantastic what you see ability wise and that, but where players are rolling about, it was generation, players were a lot tougher.
I want to fast forward a little bit to early 1998. Ruud Gullit was replaced by Gianluca Vialli in the Chelsea hot seat. What was your thoughts at the time on this switch?
Yeah, I mean, I was just shocked. I think, like most of us, like the young lads, anyway, we probably didn't know. Other players might have been privy to what was going on, but yeah, just shocked. And then, like I say, Ruud was like player manager. And then it's like Luca is now player manager. It was just mad. But I suppose whereas Luca, a friend, he had to then sort of distance himself a bit because naturally you're going into a position of leadership. So there was although he still had, he had to sort of, rightly so, distance himself, and you see a change. But yeah, I mean, he took to it really, really quickly, and obviously, rather than get someone in, from the outside, I suppose it turned out it was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Because the success that came from that.
And what were the overall sort of player reactions for the switch in terms of, okay, Vialli was once our teammate, but now he's taken that hot seat. Was there any sort of issues in terms of players perhaps finding it hard to adapt now that Vialli was in charge?
I don't know. I suppose maybe more so the older players, because it was weird at Chelsea because they sort of harp on about having a good dressing room and stuff, but at Harlington, where we used to train, used to have like separate little dressing rooms. It weren't one big one where you just the way it was. So in one dressing, I think it was three. I was in the youngsters one that I went into, which was Doobs, Jody Morris, Mark Nichols, Paul Hughes, Nick Colgan, maybe Nick Crittenden, or he might have been younger. Was it Andy Myers? I think Andy Myers. I don't know if Eddie, but anyway. And then in the other ones, you had the older players and stuff. So they were probably more, we were sort of, didn't have too much other than, like you go training and that, but they were probably more on a friends level. So they might, seen a change or whatever. But whatever happened, they dealt with it and it worked well because the results sort of, show that.
Well, they did, because we would end up winning the League Cup final in '98, beating Middlesbrough. What was that like again? Obviously, viewing it from the sidelines, but again, still being part of that team that was starting to get that winning feeling going in when it came to cup finals.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. I was gutted because I played up until the semis. Now I didn't play the final, and yeah, you don't get a medal. So it's weird. Like afterwards, you sort of think, like after your career, because you are part of it. You played all the early rounds and stuff, and then just don't play the semi and final. But no, it was fantastic, and it was a good group. Everyone was there together, which you have to have a great team spirit. And you can see the photos after, everyone's together. There was about 8 players not involved, and then you obviously have the subs. But no, it was just fantastic. And you're obviously hoping your team wins. For this occasion, like when I say like I used to chop and change it. This occasion you're not there, but you want the best for your teammates, and you naturally want to win as a club.
And we do quite better in the Premier League as well. At that point, we'd finish 4th that season, which meant we would qualify for Europe next season anyway. Was there much a satisfaction amongst the boys that, okay, for 4th, this is a great achievement, we can now push on? Or was their expectations a little bit greater, thinking we could have got a little bit more?
I don't know really. I mean, it was, I suppose, it's you're sort of getting closer and closer each year. So there was always that. But I think what you find with the top players, they're never content. They're never satisfied, and rightly so. You've got to keep pushing. I remember when I come in from Cambridge, just a little thing. I'll go and win an header, thinking I've done well. And I remember LeBouf saying, no, when we go out and win it, we direct it to keep possession. I say it's always like, I thought I'm doing all right now. But yeah, no, it was always you're striving to do one more. You look at all the top players and the top clubs, they've got to have that mentality. You cannot rest on your laurels. You've got to keep pushing. And the big one was the European, because I know with like Wise used to say, obviously they won it. It's the only won it in Europe back then, when in Osgood's time, Peter Osgood. And we really want to try and match that achievement, what they did. So there was always one eye on that. That was
Well, we'll touch on that now, because we was able to reach the final of the Cup Winners' Cup, where we'd play Stuttgart in the final. Describe to us the build up to the game, because you was selected to play to start the match. When did you know that you'd be starting the match, and what was it like in the dressing room, sort of, 10, 15 minutes before kickoff?
Yeah, so I remember Graham Ricks pulling us and telling us I'm starting. I think it was because we might have been out there. It was definitely a day, but it might have been a day or two. And we was out there, and I think I was rooming with Flo, Torrandre Flo, and you sort of know before because Rude sometimes he wouldn't name the team sheet until you're having a team meeting, like at the hotel. So you didn't know. So to know a couple of days before, it's like sometimes you'd rather not know, so you're not wasting nerve on it and stuff. But no, just mentally I got into such a zone because Chelsea, kindly was taking your partners out there to watch. And I remember Joanne, like, I was gonna, and I just thought, I'm not gonna do it. She's still, ain't happy to this day. But I just thought, no, I don't want no outside, things to worry about. Just want a job to do. And going into the game, we actually trained the night before at the stadium in Stockholm, and you're just there, and you think, and the pitch weren't great. When you think now the carpets. The stadium was amazing, but the pitch was bobbly. It weren't the best, pitch. And you obviously know your plan. And like I say, you just got a job to do, and that was my mindset really.
And it was a tight game. It was decided by a wonderful strike from Zola. It just came on from obviously being on the subs bench as well. And you can tell by the look on his face, he wasn't happy to be on the bench. He came on, he obviously proved the point. He couldn't have hit that ball any sweeter, could he?
I think it's such an iconic goal. When you see it now, he cashed it on on the half volley, sorry, and it just rises into the top. It was just amazing, and then he goes off on his celebration. But it was fantastic moment, for him to come on and do that play, to bring him off the bench. I mean, come on. So it was Luke who started and Flo, wasn't it?
Yes.
Obviously got use, you look at that front four, that you can use, obviously two at a time. But it was just a magical moment. And it was the longest after he scored that goal. He's just thinking, please, ref, just blow the whistle. It was the longest. And, you look at it now with defending corners and stuff, and you're just trying to, just see it out. And it was, what, at the end of it, it was actually relief at the end of it because we had like 3 sections of the stadium and Stuttgart had one. It was like, and sometimes that could be because you don't want to let anyone down. You want to please, and it was just like such relief that you've done this for these supporters and for your teammates. I just remember now you can breathe. Yeah.
It was a very big moment for the club as well, as you said, having won it decades before and having it now done in '98. And when you see Wise lifting the trophy and everybody, again, having that satisfaction of winning that Cup Winners' Cup. For you personally, though, again, being at the club at a short time from that point to collect that medal, that must have been a real sense of achievement for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing, to think that. And just remember, we had our old mobile phones, wasn't it, back then, the old flips, and you're going after getting the phone calls coming. And it was just, I don't think you actually, because you got to sort of manage the situation, then it's kind of sinks in after the sort of magnitude of what you've just achieved, because you're kind of in your bubble a little bit, with your teammates, and you're against, the opposition. But it's only like a little time after that you actually think, what an achievement.
Did Vialli say much after match?
Yeah, I mean, he was just elated, really. I remember him talking to me before, because he always used to say to me, because really, like with myself, I started off as a midfielder, as a winger, and he always used to say, don't go beyond the ball, support. I want you to support. And I wish I'd have listened a bit more. But yeah, I always had a tendency to go beyond the ball, looking to get played in. But this game beforehand, he was like, look, I just want, make sure you support. Try not to get forward. So, it's just you have to heed the advice and try and play with maturity, really.
And strangely enough, that would end up being your final game for the club because in the summer of '98, you would leave to join Leeds United for a fee, from what I was doing my research, was around £1.6 million. How did this move come about for both you and Chelsea?
I knew you sort of hear of interest, didn't you? So I knew that there was interest during that season before, and it was just at that time. I suppose you have agents, and agents are like trying to get. So I think he spoke to Chelsea and whatever, and I think they were willing to do a deal, but it did come. And at the time, like I say, like so was the England left back. So I'm thinking, you're looking at it. So and they obviously offered a 5-year deal, and it was quite hard to turn down. So at that time, funny enough, Palace I think were interested as well, which was amazing when you sort of think of it, because I think Terry Venables was manager, and I only found this out after because when I signed for Leeds, George Graham said, "Oh, a friend," like he didn't say, but he said a friend really. Right, sorry.
That's all right.
Said about it, and I imagine that was Venables because Venables was manager at Palace, but I think he then found out that he didn't have the funds because I think he was going to put an offer in or something, but didn't have the funds, and then I think he left the club. But yeah, I mean the Leeds thing, I thought with George Graham being, such a great defensive manager, that my game could really develop. Obviously they were in Europe as well, and it was just seen as a good move. But at the time, I look at it and I think, Lasso's left back as well, and I don't know. I sort of thought I can't leave on any better terms. Do you know what I mean? My last game was sort of the European Cup final, so there was that. But do I regret it? I mean, in football, they say about luck, and I don't think you can't blag football. Do you know what I mean? You don't have, if you're in it for a long, you're in it for a long time, but little bits of luck that can, go against you or for you is managers. And signing for Leeds and with George Graham, he left after 3 months. So in that respect, I just signed a 5-year deal, and then George Graham went to Tottenham after 3 months, and I'm like, no, that's unlucky. Do you know what I mean? But little things like that can be, you just get on with it. And David O'Leary come in. But yeah, no, it was. I just looked at it at the time. I think I didn't let anyone down at Chelsea, and that I left on. My last game was a European final. Yeah,
Not bad though.
no,
For a final game to lift a European trophy. Not many players can say that.
yeah, no, just yeah.
I want to touch on modern day football for now, and thankfully something that wasn't happening in the '90s was VAR, as obviously a huge topic of conversation amongst many people within the game and outside the game as well. What's your thoughts on VAR? Are you for it, against it? What's your sort of take on this new technology?
I remember when I was at Palace, like we scored a goal, and it was so blatantly over the line against Liverpool. I think it was Tommy Black scored it, and it was like it's crying out for goal line technology. So that was all, and I think that's where it should be at. And I do think there should be people around the ground who can help and assist, But the fact is that they're slowing the game down so much. I mean, it could lose its edge where you're celebrating. You've got one eye, hold on, I can't. But the fact that they're getting these decisions wrong is like, that I think if you look at anything, you slow it down, it can look worse than what it was. I just think, there's going to be human error, for and against you. I would rather see it that, they say these don't lie. If you've got people, I do think people that have been in the game as well would help, ex-players or whatever, just because, you kind of know when someone's, playing for it and going down a little bit light. But I'm a bit on the fence with that. Really, I could see. Listen, everyone wants fairness, which I agree with that. But sometimes it gets a bit ridiculous. You see some of these decisions, and you're like, yeah.
Speaking of ridiculous, I want to talk about Chelsea of 2024, and obviously with Mauricio Pochettino in charge, he's got a lot of young players, a lot of players that are still learning the game. The results have been very inconsistent. That's sort of safe to say, but there is still a chance of Chelsea could get a European spot this season. What's been your take on Chelsea of 2024 from looking in on the sidelines? Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't know about. Listen, Pochettino's a great manager, isn't he? And I'm glad to see, that they're sticking with him, and that 'cause I think it is going to take time. When I look from the outside in, it was like signing loads and loads of players. What's the identity of these players? It's and I don't know. I just think it's the club's going through a bit of a transition. It weren't great the other day. What you see with a penalty situation with players, listen, you always want, but and I don't know. There just seems to needs that togetherness, doesn't it? Everyone sort of pulling in the right direction. But I do think like they're playing Arsenal coming up, and I do think you look at it now, and I think Chelsea are becoming that animal again. That's going to rightly so. You look at the players that we've got, and I just think maybe it's going to take time, but yeah, you just got to persevere. He's a top drawer manager, and and you get the team. You get the confidence within the team, that belief which is coming, and they're picking up some great results.
And just finally, Danny, how do you look back on your time with Chelsea?
I just love it. I look back so proud, to have, achieved what we achieved as a team. And do you know what it's like? It's lovely. It's the only club I've actually played for. I always think if you represent a club, what a powerful message to send to young players coming through. That listen, I've represented this club. You're for life. Do you know what I mean? And Chelsea they put on all these events, and they're brilliant with ex-players. I've got to say, it's like the only club who really do make an effort, and I'm just proud. And when you go back, it's just class. It is real class, and looking back on my time is just with fondness and proud to have played. Which great players, but great people. When you see them now, we don't keep in touch, but when you see them, it's always nice just to catch up. It's like you see them yesterday. Do you know what I mean? It's just just proud to have represented the club.
Brilliant. Danny, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Hopefully we'll see you down at the bridge quite soon as well. But again, thank you very much for being on the show today.
All right, lovely. Thanks, Keith. Thanks.